Three, two, one. Engine full power.
Welcome to Your Space Journey, where we venture into the future of space exploration. Your journey begins now.
Hello, thanks for joining me today for Your Space Journey. My name is Chuck, and today I'm pleased to introduce my interview with Ashlee Vance, the New York Times bestselling author of Elon Musk. In his latest book, When the Heavens Went on Sale, Ashlee takes us on a captivating journey into the world of commercial space, shedding light on the revolution happening right above our heads. With unprecedented access to private space companies, Ashlee unveils the untold stories of misfits and geniuses racing to put space within reach. Get ready to discover how this new space economy is transforming economics, geopolitics, and daily life, and what it means for the future of humanity's ventures beyond Earth.
Your Space Journey.
Ashlee, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure because I am loving this book. I haven't got as far through it as I wanted to, but When the Heavens Went on Sale is fantastic. And I just want to kind of go back a little bit because your story fascinates me. I mean, best-selling author of Elon Musk, New York Times bestseller, which is impressive. But even going back before that, I understand, it's not like as a kid you had this aspiration of writing about space or anything like that. It just sort of, you're an awesome writer. And I just would love to know, how did your passion for writing come about? What spurred that?
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you to say. I've always wanted to be a writer. I just didn't know what kind I would be. And then through a couple twists of fate, I stumbled into journalism and got the bug and have done that for a number of years. And I just seem to keep expanding, going from news stories at the New York Times to big magazine features at Business Week, and then books. And then to your point, was not a space nerd. Kind of liked it, but was not hooked like so many people are. And then it was while I was doing the Elon Musk book and reporting so deep on SpaceX that was probably my favorite part of all the reporting, and I was just blown away by the company. And right as I finished that book, this whole world of commercial space opened up, and so I just decided to chase it.
Well, and chase you did, and I want to go back to Elon Musk again because that book had to be amazing. What got you started writing that?
Well, that one was funny. I mean, I'm a tech journalist, so I'm always covering sort of a little bit of everything. And, I really started digging into Elon around 2012, which was a pretty interesting time. People forget now because he's gone through so many undulations and highs and lows. But in 2012, yeah, he was... I wouldn't say he was like a pariah in Silicon Valley, but he was not. He was sort of thought of as this guy who's always talking about electric cars and rockets and like nothing's working, and people had penned tons of magazine profiles about him, and but then in 2012, SpaceX flew cargo to the International Space Station, and Tesla came out with the Model S, which was a huge unexpected success, and so I did a big profile on him, just being like, this guy who's been promising stuff for about 12 years is finally all kind of clicking. And same thing. That's when I first saw the SpaceX factory and the Tesla factory and had my interactions with Elon. I was like, man, this guy's more, he was sort of a caricature, I would say, a little bit at that point. And I just thought there's a lot more to this guy than people realize. And so I just dug in.
Yes, this too. And I feel amiss if I don't, because I definitely want to get into your book, but I want to ask you one last thing. We just came off this awesome first test flight attempt by SpaceX Starship. I understand you were actually even in touch a little bit with Elon about that. Can you tell me what was your impressions of that flight itself?
Well, following SpaceX and doing this latest book where I got to witness a lot of rocket makers trying to build a rocket. Yeah. I mean, I got a firsthand taste for just how hard this is. And now you're talking about the world's largest rocket. And there's such funny things, I think, for people who are not maybe, really just deep down in the industry, because it looks like this binary thing. If either it works or it blows up, and then it's seen as a failure. But for a first attempt, on such a massive rocket. To me, just a huge success. I mean, if it doesn't blow up on the pad and kind of destroy everything, you're doing pretty well. And it flew for a long time. And so the biggest win on things like this is just collecting all this data as it flies. And yeah, and to your point, so I was texting with Elon after the launch, and he came away just more optimistic that they're quite close to getting this thing to orbit successfully.
See, I think that's incredible. And one thing I do want to now talk about with the Heavens 1 is your kind of access. I mean, I guess I was talking about Elon because, you have this rapport with you get to know these people, they respect you. And then here you are in your book, you get away from the typical, SpaceX and Blue Origin and you focus on just the Silicon Valley mental attitude of these startups that came along and did some wonderful things like Planet Labs, like Astra, like Rocket Lab, and Firefly. What made you decide to focus on them?
Well, I mean, you're spot on. I mean, we'd gone from this period where a handful of governments controlled space, and then we had this billionaire era, and so much attention was paid by me and others, to Elon and Jeff and Richard Branson. But I saw there was this fascinating world where we'd gone past the billionaires, and now venture capitalists were funding rocket companies, satellite companies. We'd kind of been pining for this commercial space age for decades, and it had never quite materialized. And then all of a sudden, we still don't know if this will be a success or not, but people are making a go of it. And when I was visiting some of these companies, I just realized whatever vision people have of what space looks like NASA and a bunch of people from MIT and the world's best and brightest and most polished scientists and astronauts. This is not what commercial space looks like at this point. I mean, there's some of that, but it's like welders from Texas and Navy deep sea divers who have some weird set of skills that these companies want. And so I decided to focus more on like the Wild West of what was brewing. And, to your other point, I think the Elon book and just my other stories had opened up this access to worlds that are usually it's quite confidential. People don't really, there's a lot at risk. They don't want you to see the rocket blow up or anything like that. And these companies were all, they were all willing to let me sit there for about 5 years following their every move.
That had to be, I just your patience is incredible, for one, because I'm sitting there going, your father's companies for at least 5 years, and you're finding out this information. You're getting in there. I mean, you're at the facility, you're talking to people, you're rubbing shoulders with them, but you can't really talk about it, right? I mean, you're writing it down, you're journaling, which is incredible. How hard was that to kind of keep it under wraps? And then what was the timing where you decided, okay, now it's time to unleash the beast, so to speak?
It was hard. I mean, part of it was exciting just because you feel like you're in this kind of interesting secret world. And I made a couple deals with one company in particular, Astra, that's in the book. Just by happenstance of timing, I heard about them and discovered them really like the day they started. And so it was me in a room with 5 of their first engineers trying to get their rocket engine to light for the first time. And it was just sort of like, look, we don't know how this is going to pan out, but you can follow the whole thing until we try to get to space. And I had always, going back to the space, I started covering SpaceX too late to see the Falcon 1, which was their first rocket. And I'd always wanted to see what it was like to build that thing from scratch and make it for the first time. And so I had this opportunity to kind of replicate that experience. And so mostly I just wanted to live it, and then it all got a little carried away. I ended up going to, New Zealand many times, India, French Guiana, Alaska, Texas, all over the world, following these rocket launches and companies. And so it just became something of a adventure. But it was, And I just kept things to myself because I knew I had this great material.
Oh, you do, and I got to ask you about New Zealand. So naturally, I'm thinking of Peter Beck. What was
Yeah.
your what was he like? What was your facility like?
Well, it's amazing. I mean, most people don't know Peter, which might change with this book, and it's something of a tragedy. I mean, after SpaceX and Elon, there really is one other major game in town, which is Rocket Lab, this rocket company based in New Zealand. And Peter is the story is almost too good to be true. I mean, this guy did not even go to college.
Right.
He had an apprenticeship at a dishwasher maker and sort of did rocket experiments and propellant experiments in his backyard shed. And New Zealand is a country with no aerospace anything, no history to lean on, no materials. And so what this guy did is he built the second coming of SpaceX almost in the middle of nowhere. And I just think of him as he's kind of like the anti-Elon in some ways. I mean, this is not some flashy guy bashing people on Twitter and
Right.
and living this Hollywood lifestyle. I mean, he is what I think of as like the archetypal engineer. It's this guy who's consumed with trying to build things and build rockets. And to me, it's I don't know if I have a favorite story in the book, but it would be up there really close because I think Peter is he's got to be like a one in, I don't know, a couple billion kind of figure.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. That kind of reminds me. Your subtitle of your book is "The Misfits and Geniuses Racing to Put Space Within Reach."
Yeah.
What? Expound on that.
Well, Peter's more in the genius category, but there's a lot of misfits out there. I mean, part of the story is like what happens when the capitalists take over space, and it does not look like what happened when largely government-backed organizations were running this thing. I mean, space, in a lot of ways, barely changed for 60 years. We're still setting up outside of SpaceX very similar rockets on similar technology. There was not a lot of embrace of the tremendous progress that have been made in consumer electronics. And anyway, when all this money shows up, it comes with these new pressures, and it comes with the Silicon Valley ethos of kind of moving faster. And so you got some geniuses, you got some idealists, and then you got some misfits because people are sort of trying to see who could get there first and what they could do. And it's a proper race. And going back to that earlier point, is just a very different cast of characters than what we'd seen in the past. And so the heart of this book, which is overall it's an optimistic book. This is not a screed about capitalists going to space, but
Right.
it is about there's this moment in time, and there is both good and bad that comes with it.
Yeah, I think it's good. And one thing that I guess I was really impressed by too is just Planet Labs itself. Talk about the silicon attitude, but also the no nonsense. How can we make this work? How can we do it cheaper and better? Using off the shelf technology. For those of people out there who might not be familiar with Planet Labs, can you just in a nutshell tell us about them?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Peter, people don't know about Planet Labs, but outside of SpaceX, probably the most amazing story that's happened in commercial space in the last decade. This is a company that what they do is they surround the Earth with these small shoebox-sized imaging satellites. And so they are taking a picture of every spot on the Earth's landmass about 12 times a day. Historically, even the US, Russia, China only have a handful of spy satellites that are watching very specific places. And if a war breaks out, yes, they can move the satellite to look at that or a point of interest. But Planet is watching everything all of the time, which sounds a little spooky, and it is, but it's far less like spying on people and more watching the sort of day-to-day activities of the human race. Where are trees being cut down in the Amazon? How many people are in a Walmart parking lot during back to school shopping season? Where is oil moving around? And then a lot of human rights things, are there refugees? Are there mass graves in places? It's this like accounting system of the Earth. And Planet was the first company to figure out how to move from this mainframe style approach to satellites where you pay $1 billion for something that's supposed to fly for 20 years, and it's something much more modern, which is a $100,000 tiny satellite, put up hundreds of them, and they're almost disposable. I mean, they come back, they burn up in the atmosphere, and you put new ones up with new technology and just refresh this all the time.
Yeah, I think it's neat. And the whole vision behind that, let's send up a bunch more smaller satellites. Let's make this affordable. I mean, it totally changed, obviously, the space landscape, which is what your book is perfectly about. So what would be the one takeaway, if there's one takeaway you would say for a listener that you'd want, or a reader that you want them to take away from your book?
Well, I think we're at this fascinating time that I wanted people to be aware of. Through the last 60 years, we put up 2,500 satellites in low Earth orbit. And over the last 2 years, that number has doubled to 5,000. Yeah. It's going to double again this year. It's going to double and double and double till we have about 100,000 to 200,000 satellites orbiting Earth in a short period of time. And so this book is about what this technological change means to people. It's about the characters who are driving this. I think we are, in essence, building a computing shell around the planet, which is going to be much like the internet build out. This is kind of like our next great technological evolution, and it comes with a lot of good, and it comes with some potential bad. And I wanted people to be aware of this, to be excited about it, to be knowledgeable about it, and to see the people who built it.
Again, fascinating book. When the Heavens went on sale, I highly recommend it. Ashlee, I just have to ask, what's next for you? What's coming up?
Oh, good question. Well, I also make a television show called Hello World, which I'd love people to watch. It's a technology travel show. I've just spent the last few months, every episode's on a different country. And so for the last 5 months, I've been in about 12 different countries.
Wow.
Filming the show. It starts airing on July 3rd on Bloomberg and YouTube. And then I'm hunting, for my next book. I think I'm going to pause on space for a little bit and go a different direction after all these years, but I'm sure I'll come back to it eventually.
We'll let you take a break from space for a little bit. You've certainly made your mark on it. Again, congratulations on this new release, your latest book. That's great. I'm glad about your show. Cannot wait for that to come out. Ashlee, I want to thank you for just taking time to join us today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you. Likewise. Thanks very much.
Your space journey.
Well, I really enjoyed my conversation with Ashlee today, and I'm really loving his book, When the Heavens Went on Sale. Highly recommend it. Available at a bookseller near you. If you'd like to learn more about Ashlee, just go to his website at ashleevance.com. I want to thank Ashlee for joining me today. I want to thank you for joining me as well. Again, if you could do me a small favor, please share this episode with a friend. I'd certainly appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll see you next time. God bless.